Matt Cooper bought his land fair and square, but the local HOA decided they could make the rules. They welded shut his only access road, refused to give him a key, and even started fining him for breaking their bogus regulations. Their arrogant leader, Joyce Mills, was certain he'd cave like everyone else. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. When lawyers, the police, and one very determined homeowner with a bulldozer got involved, things spiraled out of control. And you won't believe how it all ended. Matt Cooper never wanted to be part of anyone's stupid community rules. That's exactly why he bought a house on the edge of private land, a place where no one could tell him what color to paint his mailbox or how often to trim his damn lawn. It was his land, his road, his peace. But peace never lasts when entitled assholes are involved. From day one, the Homeowners Association, HOA, made it clear they didn't like him. Not officially, of course. No, officially, they welcomed him to the neighborhood with forced smiles and tight handshakes. But beneath all that fake politeness, Matt could feel the hostility, like he was some kind of stray dog who wandered into a purebred kennel. The problem? His house wasn't part of the HOA. He wasn't under their control, and that pissed them off. At first, it was passive-aggressive bullshit. A few disapproving stares when he parked his truck in his own driveway. HOA newsletters mysteriously appearing in his mailbox, even though he wasn't a member. An anonymous complaint about his unkempt yard, despite the fact that his yard wasn't even visible from the main road. He ignored it because who the hell cared? Then, one evening, Matt drove home after a long day and nearly crashed his truck. Because right there, blocking his own goddamn driveway, was a massive metal gate. A solid, welded, padlocked gate. Matt sat in his truck, gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. He blinked. Once. Twice. Hoping maybe, just maybe, his eyes were screwing with him. Nope, the gate was real. With slow, deliberate movements, he climbed out of the truck and walked up to the thing, placing a hand on the cold, unyielding metal. His stomach churned. This was his property, his road. And yet, someone had the balls to lock him out of his own land. Then he saw the sign. HOA property, no trespassing, for access, contact administration. Matt stared at the words. His brain refused to process them. HOA property. This wasn't HOA property. This was his property. This had to be a joke. But judging by the industrial-grade welding on the hinges, no joke. His pulse spiked as he yanked out his phone and dialed the HOA's number. It rang 3 times before a familiar, overly polite voice answered. Mr. Cooper, we were expecting your call. Matt clenched his jaw. Oh, you were, huh? Joyce, he said, voice low and tight. What the hell is this gate doing in front of my house? Joyce Mills, head of the HOA and professional pain in the ass, let out a light, patronizing laugh. I understand your confusion, but rest assured this is simply a necessary measure. Your rights to this road have been reassessed. It now falls under HOA jurisdiction. Matt blinked. Once. Twice. His grip on the phone tightened. Reassessed by who? Because last time I checked, I own this land. Well, we've had some concerns. We're just taking steps to maintain order. Order from what exactly? My house is a quarter-mile from the nearest HOA property. I don't even use your roads. It's about community harmony, Mr. Cooper. Matt felt something in his skull crack. Community harmony? His house wasn't even in their goddamn community. I'm not part of the HOA, Joyce. You have no authority over me. I'm afraid that's no longer entirely true. You can't just... If you attempt to remove the gate, we will pursue legal action. Have a lovely evening, Mr. Cooper. Click. Matt slowly lowered the phone. His ears were ringing. His heart slammed against his ribs. He turned back to the gate, his prison. And that's when he realized something very, very important. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Matt Cooper had always believed in playing by the rules. That's why he had gone through all the proper channels when purchasing his home. He had checked the property lines, read every legal document, and made sure there were no restrictions that could tie him down. His land, his house, and, most importantly, his road. So when the HOA decided to block it with a welded metal gate and declare it their own, something inside him snapped. They weren't just stepping on his rights, they were challenging his very existence in their so-called perfect community. And if they thought he was the type to just roll over and accept it, they were about to learn otherwise. Step 1. Calling in the professionals. Matt wasn't stupid. He knew that going up against an HOA wasn't as simple as just cutting the lock and reclaiming what was his. These organizations weren't run by rational people. They were run by individuals who thrived on technicalities, loopholes, and intimidation. So before he did anything, he gathered every document he had and went straight to a lawyer. Richard Calloway was a seasoned real estate attorney with over 30 years of experience dealing with power-hungry HOAs. He had the tired, skeptical look of a man who had spent his career fighting bureaucracy and winning. Matt handed over the stack of paperwork and got straight to the point. "Tell me I can fight this." Richard flipped through the documents, his expression unreadable. He didn't rush. He took his time examining every detail, occasionally nodding to himself. After what felt like an eternity, he finally leaned back in his chair. "You have a solid case," Matt exhaled. "So I can sue them?" Richard sighed. "You can, but that's exactly what they want." Matt frowned. "What do you mean?" HOAs operate on a simple strategy. They make fighting them as frustrating, time-consuming, and expensive as possible. They know that most homeowners don't have the resources to engage in a prolonged legal battle. They're not trying to prove they're right. They're trying to make this so exhausting that you give up. Matt clenched his jaw. "I'm not giving up." Richard smirked. "Good, because if you want to win, you'll need to be just as relentless as they are." Step 2. Negotiation, if you can call it that. Matt wasn't opposed to diplomacy, if it worked, but deep down, he already knew Joyce Mills wasn't the type to be reasonable. Still, he tried. He walked into the HOA office unannounced, pushing past the receptionist and marching straight into Joyce's office. She was sitting at her desk, her fingers typing away on a keyboard as if she were handling something far more important than stealing people's property. She barely glanced up as Matt entered. He planted his hands on her desk. "Take the gate down." Joyce finally looked up, her lips curling into a slow, amused smile. Mr. Cooper, we've already been through this." "No, you talked, and I listened to a bunch of nonsense. That road belongs to me. You have no legal right to block it." Joyce sighed, tilting her head slightly, as if he were a stubborn child, refusing to understand a simple lesson. "The HOA has made a decision. The road is now under our jurisdiction." Matt's hands curled into fists. "That's not how property laws work." Joyce's smile widened. "And yet here we are." Matt stared at her, trying to process the sheer, unshakable arrogance she carried. "This isn't over." Joyce gave him a polite, almost rehearsed shrug. "You do what you need to do, Mr. Cooper. We'll do the same." Step 3. Now it's personal. If they had just left it at the gate, Matt might have played the long game. He might have built his case, filed the right paperwork, and fought them in court. But they pushed it further. The first fine appeared the next morning, taped to his windshield. Violation notice, unauthorized parking, $250 fine. Matt read it twice, then a third time. Then he let out a short, disbelieving laugh. They had physically blocked him from accessing his own driveway, and now they were fining him for parking outside their approved zones? He called the HOA. Joyce picked up on the second ring. "Mr. Cooper, always a pleasure. You want to explain why I just got fined for parking on my own property?" "Oh, but you aren't." Matt frowned. "Excuse me?" "Your vehicle is parked outside of designated HOA-approved areas. That's a violation of our community guidelines." Matt ran a hand down his face, breathing deeply. "Joyce, you locked me out of my own driveway. Where exactly am I supposed to park?" "That's not our concern, Mr. Cooper. We simply enforce the rules." Click. She hung up. Matt stood there, staring at his phone. She had actually hung up on him. That was it. That was the moment he decided he wasn't just going to fight back. He was going to make them regret ever messing with him. Step 4. The breaking point. Matt spent the next 2 days gathering evidence. He took pictures of the gate, videos of himself being forced to park elsewhere, and copies of all the HOA fines and notices. He documented every single thing they did. Then, just when he thought things couldn't get worse, they did. A tow truck showed up. He had barely stepped outside when he saw it, a big, ugly tow truck, already hooking up to his car. Matt ran. "Hey, that's my car." The driver barely spared him a glance. "HOA orders, buddy. Your car's parked illegally." Matt almost lost it. He turned and spotted Joyce standing a few feet away, watching the scene unfold with that same infuriating smirk. "You're going to regret this," he said, his voice dangerously calm. Joyce just laughed. "Oh, Mr. Cooper, we are the HOA. We don't regret anything." Matt watched as his car was towed away. No, this wasn't just about fighting back anymore. This was war. Matt Cooper had never been the kind of guy to pick a fight. But if someone started one, he was the kind of guy who finished it. And the HOA had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They thought they could intimidate him with bureaucracy, that he'd get tired, overwhelmed, maybe even scared enough to back down. They had grossly underestimated him. Step 1, the proof. Before Matt made his next move, he needed something solid, something that couldn't be twisted or ignored, so he called in the experts. 2 professional land surveyors arrived at his property the next morning, armed with precise equipment, official documents, and the expertise to settle this once and for all. For hours, they measured, calculated, and documented every inch of the property. Matt barely left their side, watching as they worked, his anticipation growing with each passing minute. By the afternoon, the verdict was in. The road, 100% his, the gate, illegal, and the HOA, caught red-handed in an unlawful land grab. Matt took the official report, made several copies, and sent a formal legal notice to the HOA, outlining their violations in excruciating detail. He didn't bother softening the language. "You have illegally seized private property. You are ordered to remove the gate immediately. Failure to comply will result in legal action." The response? A generic, condescending letter from Joyce Mills. "Mr. Cooper, as previously stated, the HOA does not recognize your claim to this road. We advise you to comply with our community regulations and cease further disputes." Matt read the letter twice, then laughed. "Oh, they didn't recognize his claim? Fine. Let's see if they recognize the police. Step 2, the showdown." The next morning, Matt made a few calls. By noon, 3 uniformed police officers and a court-appointed enforcement officer were standing in front of the illegal gate. Their presence alone sent a ripple of unease through the neighborhood. Curious homeowners peeked out from their windows, whispering amongst themselves. And then there was Joyce. The moment she stepped outside and saw the officers, her entire face drained of color. Matt took his time walking up to her, hands in his pockets, savoring every second of her growing panic. One of the officers, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a no-nonsense expression, took a step forward and held up an official court order. "Miss Mills, you are hereby instructed to remove this gate immediately. Failure to comply will result in legal consequences, including a potential lawsuit against the HOA." Joyce opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted between the officers, the court order, and Matt, who was watching with barely concealed satisfaction. She forced a weak, plastic smile. This must be a misunderstanding. I'm sure we can resolve this." Matt chuckled. "Oh, it's not a misunderstanding. It's actually pretty simple. Either the gate comes down today, or tomorrow I bring in a bulldozer and do it myself." Joyce flinched. "That won't be necessary." "Oh, I think it might be," Matt sighed, folding his arms, "because frankly, I don't trust you to follow through." Joyce licked her lips, stalling. We need to call an emergency HOA meeting to discuss." "Oh, you have 4 hours," the officer interrupted, his tone firm. "If that gate isn't removed by then, we will be back with an official work crew, and the HOA will be billed for the removal." Joyce opened her mouth again, probably to argue, probably to weasel out of it, but the officer wasn't done. "Nah. And Miss Mills, if you attempt to prevent or delay this action, you personally could be held legally liable." Joyce's entire posture stiffened. Matt could see the moment it hit her. This wasn't just an HOA dispute anymore. This was a legal order, and she was standing on very thin ice. She swallowed hard. Understood, Matt smirked. This wasn't just his victory. This was a lesson. And Joyce? She was finally learning exactly who she had picked a fight with. The HOA made one last mistake. They thought they could just wait it out. They figured the cops would leave, the problem would fade, and everything would go back to normal. They were dead wrong. The gate comes down. Exactly 4 hours later, the police were back. And this time, they weren't alone. A court order was now in place, making it official. The gate had to go. No more loopholes, no more delays, no more HOA power trips. And standing right behind the officers, a work crew armed with tools, machinery, and a very clear set of instructions. Tear it down. The scene was almost comical. Joyce Mills, usually so smug and self-assured, looked like she was about to pass out. Other HOA board members hovered nearby, whispering frantically, their faces pale as they watched everything unravel. "You can't do this. This is private property," Joyce finally burst out. The officer barely glanced at her. "No, ma'am, it isn't. You were already given notice. Now step back." She tried to argue. She tried to stall. But at exactly 4:01 p.m., the first worker fired up the saw. The noise was glorious. Metal screeched, sparks flew, and in less than 20 minutes, the illegal gate, the one the HOA had insisted was permanent, was reduced to a pile of scrap. Matt watched the whole thing with a satisfaction he couldn't even put into words. And the best part, the police handed the bill directly to the HOA, the lawsuit that broke them. If the HOA thought that was the end of it, they were about to get the shock of their lives, because Matt wasn't done. Within days, his lawyer filed an official lawsuit against the HOA for illegal restriction of access to private property, unlawful construction on private land, emotional and financial damages. The case didn't drag out like the HOA had hoped. The evidence was overwhelming. Matt had legal documents proving ownership of the road official warnings the HOA had ignored. A police-backed court order they had refused to comply with. The judge didn't even pretend to be sympathetic. The HOA's actions were not only illegal, but clearly intended to intimidate the plaintiff. The court finds in favor of Mr. Cooper. The verdict? A massive fine that the HOA had no way of paying without draining their entire budget. Their precious community funds? Gone. The fallout. The moment the ruling was announced, the HOA board imploded. Homeowners were furious. They had trusted Joyce and the board to manage their money responsibly. Instead, they had burned through thousands of dollars on a fight they never should have picked. Within 2 weeks, Joyce Mills stepped down as HOA president. Technically, she resigned, but everyone knew the truth. She had no choice. She had gone from queen of the neighborhood to a disgraced former leader, all because she had messed with the wrong guy. And Matt? Oh, he wasn't done making his point. The final touch. The morning after the court ruling, Matt went out early. With a cup of coffee in one hand and a hammer in the other, he got to work on one final act of revenge. By noon, every single person in the neighborhood had seen it. A massive, impossible-to-ignore sign planted right at the entrance of the community, where the gate used to be. Bold, black letters read, "Before you build a gate on someone else's land, make sure you didn't just screw yourselves." The HOA was speechless, the residents cheering, and Matt grinning like a man who had just won the greatest battle of his life. Justice wasn't just served, it was served with a side of humiliation.